And welcome to Kemet Capital, the community of holders and seekers of African capital. I'm your host, JS, and before we start, guys, you already know we begin with our word of affirmation. Our guiding principle is the Carbon Douglas function, guys, on our way to make Africa great again. It's through economic power, and in order for us to achieve that, is by producing more in a more efficient way. So today we're going to focus on this. We're going to react to this video from CNBC Africa. All right, let me just pull up the video, and it pertains to the cold supply chain in Africa. All right, guys, let's jump in, and we're going to react as we go along.
Africa remains significantly underinvested despite the high rate of food losses and fragmented supply chains. In its latest report on cold storage in Africa, Stears highlights that private investment in the continent's cold storage sector is accelerating, with East Africa recording twice as many transactions as Southern Africa. Joining us to unpack.
All right, going to introduce Stears, the firm that issued the report. So Stears was founded in 2017 by Son Ide Abdurarim, Foluso Ogunlana, and Michael Famoroti. They met in London at the London School of Economics, and Steers started as a Nigeria media and financial news platform called Steers Business. Today has since evolved into a full-fledged financial data intelligence and software provider, supplying serving global funds, corporates, and development organization investing in Africa. So the firm offers three type of products. The first one is Stirs Premium Insight. It's a subscription-based product, around $100 per year, offering in-depth analysis, investigative journalism, and macroeconomic insights focused mainly on Nigeria and Pan-African contexts. It also this service focuses on banks, fintechs as primary clients, including Paystack, Piggy West, Sterling Bank, UNDP, and so forth. The second product that they offer is Steers Pro and Advisory to deliver bespoke intelligence, country analysis, market interest strategy, and industry sector deep dives. So this is more for institutional organization like the UN Development Program. They also offer open data and election tracker through a non-profit arm offering public access tools such as real-time election tracker, urbanization, public goods, and government data sets. In 2019, one of their third arm in 2023 Nigerian elections as well. The tracker of Steers, saw millions of visits and accurately predicted the outcome using polling models. So it's important for the infrastructure of the financial capital market on the continent to have those type of players providing, data insights into the investment landscape of the continent. So I was just wanted to introduce the company. Maybe if you want to know more about them, they raised their first pre-seed investing in 2000, maybe 20, and then 2022. I remember they had the pre-seed round of VC investment with Serena Ventures. That's the VC firm founded by Serena Williams. You have Milo 7 also involved, Cascada, Hua Club. So some interesting tech investors in VC into this company. So they definitely provide the position as the Bloomberg of Africa basically there. So it's a name to remember. I'm glad that I was able to introduce that to this community here. So let's jump in and hear what they have to say.
The findings and explore the investment trends and opportunities is Michael Famoroti, Head of Intelligence and Co-founder at
One of
Steers.
the founder,
Michael, it's a pleasure to
Michael.
have you on the program. So give us a little more insight into the trends that we're seeing in terms of investment into cold storage. Clearly, with what we know about post-harvest losses, the need cannot be overstated.
Hi, Ole. Yeah, no, thanks for having me. I mean, you hit the needle on the head. I think one thing that is key about cold storage is its potential for what we call impact alpha, where essentially investors are able to generate healthy commercial returns, but also tick a lot of boxes when it comes to climate, sustainability, food security, and so on. So that's a key driver right now. In terms of trends, I think what we are seeing is, as you mentioned, we've seen a lot more investment activity so far in Southern and Eastern Africa. West Africa, so far, I would say is very much in the early stages. We have seen in the last couple of years a few companies getting external funding, but the West African landscape, particularly in Nigeria, is still heavily dependent on grants. So that means that a lot of cold storage operators are leading on, I guess, more innovative financing models to ensure that they can scale.
But speaking
Just to put you guys into context, right? The Africa cold supply chain is a temperature basically. When we're talking about cold supply chain, network for transporting and storing perishable goods, whether it's pharmaceutical or food. So that sector is rapidly growing, but it still faces significant challenges, and though with exciting opportunities, but the challenges are still there. For example, we have the infrastructure and energy gaps. We already know that most storage facility are refrigerated, transport in urban centers, living rural producer and reserve. You have high costs and limited expertise. Building and maintaining cold chains require capital with warehouse construction, uh, which is around 66% costlier in West Africa. We also have a lack of skilled technicians, leads to mishandling of temperature sensitive control goods. But this can be overcome using blockchain technology where the temperature of the product is, we follow the product through the value added process. So at each stage of production, we know exactly what temperature the product was at. So with the blockchain technology, we're able to, circumvent the challenge. But we also have a regulatory and trade frictions because we have countries with different standards that can obstruct cross-border and code logistics. We also have massive waste and missed opportunities. There's a report saying that there's up to 40 to 50% of perishable goods are lost before reach consumer due to cold chain deficits. So this is a huge loss, 40 to 50%. And if we're talking about producing more in a more efficient way, this is reducing waste. It's definitely it's an automatic increase in productivity. So we need to focus on that, think about it, because this industry, the cold storage industry, has a strong market outlook. For example, in South Africa, the cold chain market is projected at 10.4 billion in 2024, growing to 20.5 billion in 2000 by 2031. So 100% increase in 7 years. That's huge, guys. And it's driven by demand for perishable and pharmaceutical products. On a continent-wide, the sector is expected to hit 14.5 billion by 2029. This is just 4 years from now. So it's a huge market, a huge availability, huge opportunities are available to us. So it's worth looking into.
to the underinvestment in West Africa, does that say something about the level of development in the agricultural value chain? What exactly do you think has been stifling investments up to now?
Yeah, so when you look at cold chain in Africa, there's roughly 32 approaches. The first, which is quite dominant in South Africa and is growing in Kenya especially, is cold chain focused on trade. So imports and exports of meats, flours, pharmaceuticals, essentially ensuring that items that need to be traded and need be chilled, get that treatment. Now, when you look at West African countries like Nigeria, we have a much smaller export industry, right? You don't have to have cold storage for oil, right? So the first thing is West Africa doesn't have the same need on the trade front. The second big use case for cold chain is inland, where you are storing and transporting um, your harvest. Now, that is where there is even a much more substantial need in West Africa. I think the challenge so far has been on two fronts.
And guys, in my opinion, the last segment where for cold storage for agricultural goods should be our priority at this stage. For they explain, in Southern Africa, those guys they're exporting flowers, they're exporting meat, so they need bigger facilities to store those exported goods that mostly are going abroad. But for the rest of the continent, we should focus on having our tomatoes not going to waste. All our vegetables not going to waste. So those second element here that Michael is talking about is crucial, in my opinion, at least for a start. We're going to focus on, larger facilities in the future, but for now, we need to solve this problem of losing 40 to 50% of our agricultural production. When we know the share of agricultural uh, uh, production in our gross domestic productivity in our GDP in general, it's huge. So we need to make sure that it's sustainable but also efficient with minimum waste.
First is a lot of farming in countries like Nigeria is very fragmented. So cold chain producers have to do a lot of work to aggregate farmers to justify their very large capital intensive facilities. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is when it comes to affording cold chain solutions, again, these can be quite expensive, and West African farmers have not been able to cross that barrier. What we have seen in the last few years is cold chain operators rely on essentially a pay as you go or leasing approach, where rather than asking them to buy cold chain solutions, they sort of lease it to them on a different basis, right? So that is one way that has been improving the penetration of cold chain, but we still have that fragmentation problem.
Yes, and this is the fragmentation problem. It's in most industries on the continent, right? Where our effort is not. That's why there is a lack of power, because power is organized effort or organized energy. So we are not well organized. That's why we have those issues of fragmented markets. But from there, I discovered this company called Cold Hubs in Nigeria. So it's a clean tech social enterprise offering solar powered walk-in cold rooms to help smallholder farmers and market vendors reduce post-harvest losses and preserve perishable produce. So I think it was a brilliant idea because how it works, you have a cold room, typically 3 square meters, units with thick insulation, large solar arrays, batteries, and refrigeration using natural refrigerant like propane. We have an ice-based storage uh, uh, unit using split system cooling with ice tanks to ensure continuity overnight. Basically, space you store. Farmers rent plastic crates around 20 kilos and pay about 20 cents, 20 US dollar cents per crate per day. So you pay $20, it's around 100 naira, 25 cents per crate per day. So it's much cheaper than on an alternative and no upfront investment required for farmers. So this is a brilliant solution. Those type of uh, um, innovations are what will drive, guys, our economic output at the end of the day, and that will raise our living standards and our you know, and the middle class will get richer, will have more wealth because we are recreating more. If we reduce our waste by 50%, that's basically 50% increase in our production overnight because we're able to store those product in storage room like this one from Cold Hubs. So type of innovation like that matters because Cold hard, for example, can extend the shelf life from 2 to 21 days, reducing food losses by 80% and boosting farmers' income by 25%. You guys, can you imagine a quarter increase in your income just because you're able to save to waste less? It also promotes food security and nutrition by ensuring fresh produce reaches more consumers safely, empowers women entrepreneurs as hope operators and managers, and avoid use of uh, uh, you know gas generators reliant entirely on renewable energy, and uses friendly refrigerants, embraces digital tools like Code Connect, Cultivate, for inventory and price tracking. So all in all, great company that I recommend you guys, to learn more about if you're interested.
All right, so if we're, your notes highlights the next phase of private capital activity, uh, and that it will focus on scalable platforms. Can you speak to what exactly you are anticipating in that respect?
Yeah, so that's really a trend that we've seen in Southern Africa, a bit in East Africa. So what's happening essentially is when you think about cold chain solutions, as I've described, the main use cases are for trade in and out of country and in inland to help you store and distribute goods. That means that one asset that is extremely important for a cold chain supplier is your network and how much ground you can cover. So what we have seen in Kenya and Southern Africa is investors coming in essentially and either developing or buying an anchor asset, and then quickly expanding through a buy and build strategy to acquire other cold chain warehouses in different regions. That way, they are able to spread costs across board, and also just penetrate a wider region. That's super important because, again, I've mentioned a couple of times that it's a very capital intensive industry. So rapidly achieving scale is important for profitability, right? So that's why we see platforms developing in the next few years, essentially just so that they can overcome those cost barriers and achieve scale quickly.
And are we seeing that also happening in West Africa, or is that really across the continent?
So not yet in West Africa. We've seen it in Kenya and South Africa. Mainly, these platforms are focused on the cold chain producers that target importers and exporters. For the inland cold chain solutions, they tend to be more modular. So they operate what we call cooling as a service, where they essentially, as I say, lease the cold chain solutions as well as market access, green energy, and so forth to farmers. I think what we're likely going to see is some of these West African players then being bought up by the larger platforms who are more interested in then scaling inland. But so far, the market is a lot more fragmented in countries like Nigeria.
All right, let's leave it there. Thank you so much for your insights today. Michael Famaroti, Head of Intelligence and Co-founder at Stears.
All right, guys, that was Michael Famaroti. Let me know what you think of stairs, or let me know what you think of cold storage, the future of it, sector that needs to see more capital flowing into. I'll see you in the next one. Have a good one. Bye bye.